What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today, and welcome to my grandmother's house, where I'm having Thanksgiving today. Didn't have time to record it this morning, so figured I'd record a video now for all of you fine people, but again, sorry for the little weird recording situation, and if audio is off or anything else like that, doing my best with what I got. It's actually not too bad of a day, so we'll take about 10-15 minutes, and let's predict some games this week, y'all. Again, no individual game preview predictions this week because there are so many games that I want to talk about. We're going to dive on into a ton of games today, but before we do that, if you guys are as big a college football nerds as I am, you want to make sure you hit the subscribe button, you want to make sure you ring the bell, and help support the channel in literally any way that you can. I'll do my best with angles and everything, and if I'm moving around pacing a lot, it's simply because I have ADHD and I'm antsy. So yeah, that's why. Let's start out with the game that is happening tonight. Again, support me in any way you'd like to. I really appreciate it. But let's start with the game that is happening tonight. Memphis and Tulane. This is a very interesting game, and it's an interesting game for a couple of reasons. One, you look at where Tulane is ranked in the college football playoff rankings. They are right in the thick of this thing. They could push the Big 12 champ out, and I think they are well on their path because I think they're going to get a win over Memphis this week. The way that Tulane has been playing down the stretch ever since their losses to Kansas State and Oklahoma State, they have been looking absolutely phenomenal, and the guy that I especially want you to watch there is Mekhi Hughes. That running back, I think he's going to give the Memphis defense a lot of problems, and I do believe that Tulane going to be able to beat Memphis in that game happening tonight. I'm going to tune into that one amongst all the Thanksgiving NFL Day games because that one is going to be very, very fun to watch. You got some other games that are going on tomorrow. I know a lot of unranked games and things of that nature, but you take a look at what is happening in ranked capacity. Boise State wins. They're already in the Mountain West Championship game, but they can just further grab hold of that Group of 5 spot, and I think they do. I think Colorado's going to beat Oklahoma State and avoid any sort of weird chaos that's going to happen with that, or at least give themselves as good of a shot as possible to get into the Big 12 Conference Championship game. And then I know a lot of people are saying, well, if Georgia plays an inconsistent game, then Georgia Tech has a chance to beat them, which I do think is true, especially if Haynes Kings plays, and he is a big factor in that game. But the way that Carson Beck and Georgia have been looking over the past couple of weeks, I do think that Georgia's going to be able to get that one done. Now, the Georgia run game, not as good. Georgia run defense, not as good. But I do think they'll put everything together and beat their rivals in Georgia Tech from Atlanta. That game is in Athens, and I think the home crowd will do enough to help them win that game there as well. On to games that are taking place on Saturday. This could be one of the biggest Saturdays. And I was going to say of college football history, but that's definitely not true. Well, maybe it could be true. Oh, who knows, any given Saturday, right? But this could be a Saturday where we see a lot of chaos. Where I don't think we see chaos is in Columbus, Ohio. I think Ohio State is going to beat the brakes off of Michigan for a couple reasons. One, I think it's just a much more talented team. Ohio State's got talent up and down the field. Michigan is just shown to, they still have a lot of talent, but they haven't utilized it in the best way so far this season. And this is personal for Ohio State this year. What Michigan did last year was a lot of guys came back, then they went on to win the national championship. Same thing with Ohio State this year. A lot of guys came back. None of these seniors that came back want to leave Columbus without a pair of gold pants. They're almost a 3-touchdown favorite. I think they beat them by 4 touchdowns in Columbus on Saturday afternoon. Again, that is the big noon game. Tennessee and Vanderbilt. Alabama and Ole Miss, you're rooting for Vanderbilt in this game. If you want a shot to get back into the college football playoff picture, which they're still very much in, by the way, but if you want to get back into that projected bracket, Vanderbilt's going to need to come out with their 7th win of the year, and I just don't think it happens. I think Vanderbilt has got some defensive things, especially within that secondary, that you saw Jalen Milroe exploit. You've seen a couple other quarterbacks exploit. You saw Quinn Ewers exploit, and I think if Nico has himself a pretty good day, then then Tennessee's going to be able to win that game. And also Dylan Sampson, that running back, has been truly phenomenal for Tennessee this year. He'll play a big part, and I don't think the Vandy defense will be able to slow him down much either. So I got the Volunteers. Do you think a little bit closer than the 11-point spread? I think Vandy will make this one a competitive game, but Tennessee is going to be able to win that one. We're going to skip over a game because I'm going to come back to it. Notre Dame and USC. With a win, Notre Dame will cement themselves in the college football playoff, and yeah, They will. 7.5-point favorites there. I just like the way Notre Dame is playing, man. The committee sees them as a top 5 team. I've seen them as a top 5 team for quite some time now. It's because I think Marcus Freeman's bunch is playing some really good football, and Riley Leonard being able to utilize all of his ability, not only with his arm, but with his legs. I think he now has the record for the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in Notre Dame history. So congratulations to Riley Leonard for that, but especially starting to form chemistry with some of those younger and extremely talented wide receivers and tight ends. The offensive line is playing well. The defense is flying all over the field. I don't think USC is going to have the defense, let alone the offense, to be able to get through Notre Dame's defense enough. Notre Dame pulls off a big win on the road, and I do think cements themselves a spot in the college football playoff. Miami and Syracuse. With a win, Miami is in the ACC title game. With a loss, it'll be the Clemson Tigers no matter what happens against South Carolina. Prediction on that one coming in just a little bit. Miami's defense is the big key for me in this one, because if Miami is not going to be able to defend Kyle McCord and a lot of these Syracuse wide receivers that have been absolutely balling out for the Orange this season, then it's going to be some real problems for the Miami Hurricanes in this game. I do think, though, that Cam Ward has shown us enough this year, besides the Georgia Tech game. I mean, even in the Georgia Tech game, he gave that team a chance. He just doesn't let this team lose, right? Cam Ward does not let the Miami Hurricanes lose, and I don't think he's going to let them lose here. With as much as on the line in this game, you're playing for an ACC title game, you're possibly playing for your spot in a college football playoff position, and to keep those hopes alive as well, I think Miami is going to get it done. I think that Miami defense is still going to have some trouble. I think Kyle McCord's going to be able to throw for quite a bit, and this Syracuse offense is going to be able to move. Fran Brown's team has done a phenomenal job this year, but they're going to end the regular season 8-4. I think Cam Ward's going to put that team on his back, and Miami is going to be able to win that game. Cal and SMU, I think, is another interesting one, because Cal is a team that you shouldn't sleep on. Fernando Mendoza, when he gets everything cooking with those wide receivers, Jaden Ott is starting to get back there, and the Cal defense can make up a couple stops, but ever since they put Kenan Jennings at quarterback for SMU, that team has been rolling. So I think SMU, already in the ACC title game, will just cement themselves as such right there. The Iron Bowl, Auburn and Alabama. I do think Alabama is going to win this game. Auburn can win this game, though. If they played like they did against Texas A&M, and that Peyton Thorne finding that rhythm and chemistry, especially with Keandre Lambert-Smith, you have Jarquez Hunter in the backfield, and that Auburn defense didn't really play their best game against Texas A&M, at least in the second half. In the first half, they did, and if they can contain Jalen Milroe like they were able to contain Marcel Reed, then hey, Auburn's going to remain in this one, and it's going to be a fight. But I mean, when we see this Alabama team clicking on all cylinders, Jalen Milroe is explosive, Ryan Williams is explosive, this Bama defense can fly all over the field, and I think that's exactly what happens as Bama beats Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Okay, interesting one here. Arizona State and Arizona. I'm going to take the upset here. I think Arizona State is going to go down. I have doubted Arizona State a lot from preseason up until now. I did pick them to beat BYU, not an official prediction video, but I did say I did think Arizona State was going to beat BYU in a video on my channel, so I'll take that credit. Again, I want all the credit and none of the blame. I'm kidding, obviously. I'll take the blame, and I'll absolutely take the blame if Arizona State loses this game. Or if Arizona State wins this game, I just don't think it's going to happen. Arizona's not playing for a bowl game, so you might argue, what does Arizona have to play for? Pride in the rivalry game. I do like the way that Sam Levitt has been playing this year. Cam Scatterboot in the running back room is one of the most under-talked about and underappreciated players we have in our country, and that Arizona State defense was absolutely flying against BYU up until the very end, where Jake Retzlaff and company were able to bring that thing back. But I do think Arizona's going to win this game. I think Tyrone McMillan is going to pose a lot of problems for that Sun Devils secondary, and I do believe that Arizona's going to pull off that win in upset fashion. Arizona State is an 8.5-point favorite. I like Arizona to just pull out the outright upset, at the very least cover that spread, but I'm going to take them to pick the outright upset, and maybe that's ignorance on my part, because Arizona's, especially on the defensive end, and a lot of inconsistencies offensively, but I do think they're going to pull off that upset against the Sun Devils. I think that's like my hot take for the week. Missouri and Arkansas, I'm not really going to have an official prediction. I'll take Arkansas, I guess, because I just haven't really been impressed with Missouri, but if Brady Cook and Luther Burden get that thing rolling, then they're going to be tough to stop. Indiana's going to beat Purdue. we can move on from that one. I also think Oregon is going to beat Washington. I think we can move on from that one there as well. We'll skip over that one for now. I do think BYU is going to survive against Houston, so they'll give themselves a shot to get into the Big 12 title game. And if Arizona State loses, then obviously BYU would be in the Big 12 title game with a win over Houston, and I think it happens. UNLV will move on to the Mountain West Championship game with a win over Nevada, and then you have the ranked versus ranked matchup. So Iowa State and Kansas State is one that I want to talk about for a little bit, because this is an absolutely fascinating game. Again, Iowa State wins, they're in the Big 12 title game. If not, I mean, then you go to all the tie-breaking scenarios. Kansas State stays alive for a spot in the Big 12 title game. This could be really interesting to see what happens here, but I do think Rocco Becht and that running back room, and especially Jalen Noel, is going to cause problems for a Kansas State secondary that has been very up and down all season long. So I think Rocco Becht in this pass game for Iowa State will be able to do enough. Cyclone defense does like to force a fair bit of turnovers as well, and I do think they're going to turn over Avery Johnson, the Wildcats, at least once in this game, and it might help turn the tide, keep the momentum in Iowa State's favor, whatever you want to say. But the Cyclones are going to come out victorious, and they will cement a spot in the Big 12 title game in what I think is going to be an absolutely fascinating game and an absolutely fantastic game to watch there as well. All right, let's talk about Clemson and South Carolina. I think these two defenses are going to absolutely take over, but where was I? I had to stop for a little bit when my family members came out. Yeah, I think both of these defenses are going to absolutely take over because, I mean, I do like Lenore Sellers and the way he's been playing. I don't know how much he's going to be able to move the ball against this Clemson Tiger defense. And same thing with Cade Klubnik in this Clemson offense. When they are clicking, we saw it at the midway point this season and throughout some of the early games as well. When this offense gets clicking, ever since that Georgia game, it was on a roll. But now ever since that Louisville loss, they've just kind of been down. And that South Carolina pass rush, man, they got some of the best pass rushers in the country. So, yeah, I just think that these two offenses are going to have trouble moving the football in that game, and I'm going to go with what I think is overall the better defense, which I do think is Clemson. The game being in Death Valley is also going to help that case, and I do think if it came down to it, and which offense do I trust to make the more plays and make the better plays, as much as I like Lenore Sellers and the way this South Carolina team is playing, I'm going to go with Clemson. I've just seen more out of their offense this year at a more consistent basis, and maybe that's a little bit of ignorance in me saying that, but from the games that I've watched, seen a little bit more out of Clemson on a more consistent basis, and I do think, my personal opinion, when both of these offenses are clicking at its highest, I do think Clemson has the better offense, and I think they have the better defense, which is ultimately why I am deciding to pick Clemson in this game. I think the better defense will make the more stops, will force the extra turnover, make the extra play. Thanksgiving is coming back at me. And I do think Clemson will win that game, give themselves, again, that game more important than people know for college football playoff aspects, especially when you take a look at where both teams are being ranked according to the selection committee. Clemson's at 12, South Carolina is at 15. The winner of that game is very much alive for a college football playoff spot, especially if it's Clemson. And especially if it's Clemson and then Miami loses, because then Clemson will be playing for an ACC title, even if they lose this game to South Carolina and then win the ACC, because Miami loses. We could get into a whole bunch of nuances there, which I'll probably do in a video coming out tomorrow. But then what a lot of people are arguing is the biggest game of the week. It obviously has SEC championship implications. It's in College Station, Texas and Texas A&M. I'm picking the Longhorns here. I am picking Texas to win that game. And the reason that I am picking Texas to win that game is I don't necessarily trust Marcel Reed, Connor Wigman, as much as I trust Quinn Ewers. I think the experience of Quinn Ewers is going to help him. And I think, too, the Texas A&M defense has a lot of good pieces. But when that Texas defense, when the Longhorn defense gets going and they're flying all over the field, they get home to the quarterback, they can rush the passer, I think at a more effective clip than what Texas A&M can, even though Texas A&M, again, pretty darn good pass rush. We've seen them do a lot of really good things this year. I just simply trust Texas more. Texas A&M has won a lot of big games this year, and when that Aggie defense does take over a game, we saw it happen against the LSU Tigers, it can spell doom for Texas, especially once they get that crowd in Kyle Field going. but I just trust Quinn Ewers more, man. I trust his decision-making. Even though it hasn't been that great this year, I trust his veteran leadership and this core of wide receivers a little bit more than what the Aggies have on their side, and I do think Texas is going to be able to win that game. Battle in the trenches could be one that's very interesting to watch in that contest there as well. Hey, right on the 15-minute button, that was my overview and rivalry week. Tomorrow I probably will have another video out sort of discussing how big of a rivalry week, again, that's a tongue twister, say that 5 times fast, how big of a rivalry week this is, as well as maybe going through some playoff scenarios on what can happen here this week, and just a whole bunch of other things like that. Sorry, had to sneeze. Didn't want to get that on camera. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you are all having a wonderful Thanksgiving. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. Rivalry week starts tonight, baby. It's a big week in the college football landscape. I'll see all you tomorrow with another video. Goodbye. Happy Thanksgiving.